Most people preparing for OSCP focus on tools. They install Kali, they practice commands, they run scans. But very few people ask a more important question. Do I actually know how to learn this properly? OSCP is not just a technical exam. It is a learning challenge, a psychological challenge, a discipline challenge. Many candidates fail not because they lack intelligence, but because they approach learning the wrong way. They cram instead of spacing, memorize instead of understanding, panic instead of thinking, consume content instead of practicing retrieval. Module 3 exists for a reason. OffSec does not randomly include learning theory in a hacking course. They include it because the OSCP exam is designed around uncertainty. You are not tested on what you remember. You are tested on how you think when you don't know the answer. This module will change how you study. We will talk about how memory actually works, why you forget things faster than you think, why technical learning feels overwhelming, and how OffSec's methodology is intentionally uncomfortable. If you skip this module, you may still pass, but if you understand this module deeply, you dramatically increase your chances. Because OSCP is not just about hacking systems, it is about mastering your learning process. And that starts now. Before we talk about tactics, before we talk about study plans, before we talk about OSCP exam strategy, we need to understand something deeper. How does learning actually work? Because if you misunderstand how learning works, you will design the wrong study strategy, and OSCP punishes inefficient learning. Learning Objective 1. Understand the general state of our understanding about education and education theory. Most people assume learning is simple. You read something, you understand it, you remember it. But that is not how learning works. Modern education research shows that learning is not passive, it is not consumption, it is construction. You do not absorb knowledge like a sponge. You build knowledge by connecting new information to existing mental models. This is extremely important for OSCP. If you try to memorize commands without context, your brain stores them weakly. But if you understand why the command exists, what problem it solves, when it fails, then your brain forms stronger connections. Another misconception is that learning is linear. You do not read, understand, master. Instead, learning looks like confusion, partial clarity, forgetting, relearning, refinement. OSCP is designed around this cycle. You will try something, fail, research, try again. That is not inefficiency. That is learning. Passive learning versus active learning. Education research clearly shows passive learning feels productive. Active learning feels difficult. Reading documentation feels smooth. Watching videos feels comfortable. But comfort is not learning. Learning happens when you struggle, when you retrieve information, when you apply knowledge. This is called desirable difficulty, and OSCP is built entirely around desirable difficulty. Learning Objective 2. Understand the basics of memory mechanisms and dual encoding. If you are preparing for OSCP, you are managing memory. Memory is not one single system. It has stages. 1. Encoding. 2. Storage. 3. Retrieval. Encoding is how information first enters your brain. If encoding is weak, everything else fails. Encoding improves when you focus deeply, when you reduce distractions, when you connect ideas, and when you visualize concepts. Multitasking destroys encoding. Studying with notifications on reduces encoding strength. OSCP requires deep focus. Storage is how information is maintained over time. The brain strengthens memory through repetition, but not just repetition, spaced repetition. If you study something once, your brain assumes it is not important. If you revisit it multiple times over days, your brain increases retention strength. Retrieval is the most important stage. If you cannot retrieve information, it doesn't matter that you once understood it. Retrieval strengthens memory more than rereading. This is why practice labs are critical. Running a command from memory is more powerful than reading it 5 times. Dual encoding means information is remembered better when stored in multiple forms. For example, verbal explanation, visual diagram, hands-on practice. If you only read text, memory encoding is weaker. If you read, draw a diagram, practice in terminal, retention increases dramatically. This is why combining notes, diagrams, and labs creates stronger learning. Learning Objective 3. Recognize problems faced by learners. Now we move to the real dangers, the reasons most OSCP candidates struggle. The curve of forgetting. The human brain forgets rapidly. Research shows that within days, a large percentage of new information is lost. This is called the forgetting curve. If you read a chapter, understand it, never revisit it strategically, you will forget most of it. OSCP preparation lasts months. If you don't revisit concepts strategically, you will constantly feel like you are starting over. That frustration is not failure, it is biology. The solution is spaced review, not cramming. Cognitive load. Cognitive load refers to how much mental effort your working memory can handle. Working memory is limited. When you try to learn Linux, learn networking, learn enumeration, learn scripting all at once, your cognitive load exceeds capacity and learning quality drops. This is why OSCP feels overwhelming at first. It is not that you are incapable, it is that your brain has limits. Types of cognitive load. There are 3 types. 1. Intrinsic load, the intricacy of the material itself. 2. Extraneous load, poor explanations, distractions, messy notes. 3. Germane load, mental effort that builds understanding. Good study strategy reduces extraneous load, manages intrinsic load, and maximizes germane load. For OSCP, this means clean notes, focused study sessions, and structured learning. Why this matters for OSCP? OSCP does not overwhelm you by accident. It introduces uncertainty, incomplete instructions, and multi-step reasoning. If you do not understand learning theory, you interpret struggle as failure. But struggle is part of encoding, confusion is part of integration, repetition is part of strengthening. This learning unit establishes learning is active, not passive. Memory requires retrieval and spacing. Forgetting is natural. Cognitive load must be managed. In the next learning unit, we will explore the unique challenges of learning technical skills in digital environments. Now, we move to something more specific. Learning technical skills, especially cybersecurity, introduces challenges that are different from traditional learning. OSCP is not a history exam. It is not a theory test. It is a technical problem-solving exam, and that creates unique learning difficulties. Learning Objective 1. Recognize differences and advantages of digital learning materials. Modern OSCP preparation happens almost entirely in digital form. You read PDFs, use online labs, watch videos, and interact with virtual machines. This is very different from traditional classroom learning. The advantages of digital learning. Digital learning allows instant access to tools, interactive experimentation, real-time practice, and repetition without limits. You can break systems, reset machines, and try again. This is extremely powerful. Traditional education cannot simulate real attack environments. Digital labs can. The hidden challenges of digital learning. However, digital learning also introduces problems. First, distraction. When you study on a computer, you are also one click away from notifications, social media, and unrelated content. This reduces encoding strength. Second, shallow engagement. It is easy to skim, scroll, and copy-paste without thinking deeply, but OSCP requires deep processing. Illusion of competence. Digital learning creates a dangerous illusion. When you follow a walkthrough, copy commands, and see successful output, it feels like learning, but recognition is not mastery. If you cannot reproduce it independently, you do not truly understand it. This illusion is one of the biggest traps in OSCP preparation. Learning Objective 2. Understand the challenge of preparing for unknown scenarios. This objective is critical. OSCP is built around uncertainty. You are not told which vulnerability exists, which tool to use, which path leads to privilege escalation. You are placed in front of unknown systems and expected to reason through them. Why unknown scenarios are hard. Human brains prefer predictability. We like clear instructions, defined problems, and step-by-step solutions. Unknown scenarios remove that comfort. They create stress. That stress can reduce cognitive performance if not managed properly. Preparing without knowing the exact questions. Traditional exams allow targeted preparation. You know the syllabus. You study likely questions. OSCP does not provide exact scenarios. You prepare for categories of problems. This requires flexible thinking, pattern recognition, and principle-based reasoning, not memorization. Pattern recognition versus memorization. Memorization stores isolated facts. Pattern recognition connects symptoms, behaviors, outputs, and system responses. For example, instead of memorizing one exploit, you learn to recognize misconfigurations, unusual permissions, and exposed services. This pattern-based thinking allows adaptation when exact scenarios change. Psychological impact of uncertainty. When facing unknown systems, many candidates experience self-doubt, panic, and rushing. But panic reduces working memory capacity. Rushing increases mistakes. Understanding that uncertainty is intentional helps reduce emotional reaction. OSCP is testing how you think under incomplete information, not how much you memorized. Learning Objective 3. Understand challenges of remote or asynchronous learning. OSCP preparation is usually independent. You are not in a classroom. You do not have live instructors, immediate feedback, or structured schedules. This creates unique challenges. Lack of external structure. In traditional education, schedules are fixed, deadlines are enforced, and teachers provide reminders. In OSCP preparation, you are responsible for structure. Without structure, procrastination increases, consistency drops, motivation fluctuates. Delayed feedback. In many traditional learning environments, feedback is immediate. In OSCP labs, feedback often comes from trial and error, self-analysis, and community discussion. Delayed feedback slows progress if you are not disciplined. Isolation and motivation. Remote learning can feel isolating. When stuck on a lab machine, it may feel like you are the only one struggling, you are not progressing, and others are ahead. This perception can reduce motivation, but struggle is universal in OSCP. Isolation does not mean incompetence. Self-regulation as a core skill. Because OSCP preparation is remote, self-regulation becomes critical. Self-regulation includes planning study sessions, tracking progress, reviewing weak areas, and taking breaks intentionally. Without self-regulation, burnout becomes likely. Managing energy, not just time. Many candidates focus only on time. How many hours did I study? But energy matters more than hours. 2 focused hours are more effective than 6 distracted ones. Digital learning makes it easy to appear busy while learning little. Quality beats quantity. This learning unit explains why digital learning feels different, why unknown scenarios create stress, why OSCP uncertainty is intentional, and why remote preparation requires discipline. The next learning unit will examine OffSec's methodology and how their teaching style is intentionally designed to build adaptability. So far, we've discussed how learning works at a cognitive level, why technical skills are uniquely difficult to master, why uncertainty creates stress, why digital and remote learning demand discipline. Now we move to something extremely important. We are going to examine how OffSec teaches, because OSCP is not just about content, it is about methodology. If you misunderstand the methodology, you will misinterpret the difficulty. Learning Objective 1. Understand what is meant by a demonstrative methodology. OffSec uses what can be described as a demonstrative methodology. This means they demonstrate a concept, then they expect you to expand it independently. They do not aim to provide exhaustive instruction. They aim to show what is possible, how it works, how to approach it. Then they remove structure. Why demonstrative instead of step-by-step? Step-by-step teaching creates dependency. You learn to follow, but OSCP requires you to lead. In real penetration testing, no one hands you a checklist, a defined vulnerability, or a guaranteed path. You must observe, hypothesize, test, and adapt. Demonstrative methodology forces you to practice this early on. The discomfort is intentional. When students encounter OffSec material, they often feel, this isn't enough information. Why don't they explain more? Why is this unclear? But this discomfort is deliberate. OffSec is training you to operate without full clarity. That discomfort builds cognitive resilience. The gap between example and application. In demonstrative methodology, there is always a gap between the example shown and the real-world application. That gap is where learning happens. If everything is identical, you memorize. If everything is slightly different, you must think. OSCP lives in that gap. Learning Objective 2. Understand the challenge of preparing for unknown scenarios. This objective repeats for a reason. OffSec emphasizes unknown scenarios repeatedly because it is the core design principle of the OSCP exam. You are not tested on replication, you are tested on adaptation. Unknown does not mean random. The exam is not random. It is structured around categories of vulnerability, common misconfigurations, and predictable system behavior. But the exact implementation is unknown. You prepare for patterns, reasoning frameworks, and problem-solving strategies, not specific answers. Mental flexibility. Preparing for unknown scenarios requires comfort with ambiguity, tolerance for temporary confusion, and ability to test hypotheses. Many candidates fail because they panic when the first attempt fails, or interpret confusion as incompetence. But confusion is part of pattern formation. OffSec's philosophy, try harder. OffSec is known for the phrase, try harder. This phrase is often misunderstood. It does not mean work longer, sleep less, push blindly. It means think deeper, research independently, connect concepts, avoid quitting at the first obstacle. Try harder means engage your reasoning. Learning Objective 3. Understand challenges of remote or asynchronous learning in OffSec context. OffSec's methodology assumes independence. You are not expected to rely on constant instructor intervention, immediate hints, or guided correction. You are expected to research documentation, consult system manuals, search intelligently, and analyze outputs carefully. This mirrors real-world penetration testing. Asynchronous learning builds professional skills. When you troubleshoot alone, you build persistence, structured debugging habits, and analytical thinking. If solutions are provided too quickly, these skills remain weak. The role of community. Although learning is independent, OffSec acknowledges the value of community. However, community is supplementary, not a substitute for thinking. If you immediately ask for answers without attempting structured reasoning, you weaken learning. The goal is to struggle productively before seeking help. Documentation and self-explanation. OffSec strongly encourages documentation. This is not only for exam reporting, it reinforces retrieval, clarity, and organization. When you explain something in your own words, you deepen encoding. Self-explanation reduces illusions of competence. Why OffSec's methodology feels harder than others. Some certifications provide video walkthroughs, detailed labs, and predictable exam formats. OSCP does not, because OSCP's goal is not to test your ability to follow. It is to test your ability to reason. This difference changes everything. Psychological friction as a learning tool. OffSec intentionally creates friction. Examples: minimal hints, slightly incomplete explanations, and independent lab exploration. Friction increases attention, engagement, and memory strength. Too much ease leads to shallow learning. Developing autonomy. Ultimately, OffSec's methodology aims to build autonomy. Autonomy means you can approach a new system and map it, analyze it, test it, and adjust strategy without waiting for permission. Autonomy is what separates students from professionals. This learning unit clarifies why OffSec teaches the way it does, why uncertainty is intentional, why friction strengthens learning, and why independence is required. The next learning unit will analyze a specific case study, Chmod-X Chmod, and show how OffSec's teaching philosophy appears in practice.
Now we move from theory into application. This learning unit uses a specific example, Chmod-X Chmod. At first glance, this looks simple, but it is not about the command itself. It is about how OffSec expects you to think. This case study shows how small details matter, how assumptions fail, how independent reasoning becomes essential. Learning Objective 1. Review sample material about executable permissions. Let's begin with the basics. In Linux systems, files have permissions. Permissions control who can read, who can write, and who can execute. The chmod command modifies file permissions. For example, chmod +x file adds executable permission. chmod -x file removes executable permission. This seems straightforward, but OffSec is not testing whether you can memorize this. They are testing whether you understand what executable permission actually means. What does executable permission do? It allows a file to be run as a program or interpreted by the system. Without executable permission, a script cannot run directly. This is fundamental Linux knowledge. But knowledge alone is not the goal. Understanding is the goal. The hidden assumption. Many learners assume if something doesn't execute, it must be broken. But sometimes the issue is not the content, it is the permission. OffSec often embeds these small misconfigurations to test your attention to detail. The lesson here is, never assume content is the problem before checking configuration. Learning Objective 2. Expand beyond initial information. This is where OffSec's methodology appears clearly. They show you something small, then they expect you to expand it. If you only learn chmod modifies permissions, you have shallow knowledge. But if you ask, how are permissions stored internally? What happens when permissions conflict? What about ownership? What about SUI bits? Then you are thinking like a professional. Surface learning versus deep learning. Surface learning memorizes commands. Deep learning understands system design, interaction between components, and edge cases. In OSCP labs, small misconfigurations often reveal larger attack paths. Expanding beyond initial information is critical. Asking better questions. OffSec expects you to ask, why is this file executable? Who owns it? What if permissions are too broad? What if permissions are too restrictive? Better questions lead to better enumeration. Enumeration is built on curiosity. Learning Objective 3. Work through a problem. The case study is not about theory, it is about problem solving. Imagine you attempt to run a script and receive a permission-denied error. You could immediately search for the solution or systematically investigate. Systematic investigation might include checking file permissions, checking ownership, verifying current user, and analyzing error messages. This process is what OffSec wants you to practice. Structured troubleshooting. When encountering an issue, follow a structure. 1. Observe the exact error. 2. Gather relevant system information. 3. Test small hypotheses. 4. Adjust based on output. This approach reduces panic. It replaces emotional reaction with reasoning. Avoiding impulsive fixes. Many beginners react impulsively. They change multiple settings at once. They try random commands. They copy unknown solutions. This increases cognitive load and reduces clarity. Professional behavior is controlled and deliberate. Learning Objective 4. Understand how OffSec's teaching approach is reflected. This case study reflects OffSec's philosophy. They show a simple example, then remove complete guidance, then require independent expansion. They are not testing Linux syntax. They are testing attention, reasoning, and discipline. Small details reveal larger patterns. In OSCP, privilege escalation often depends on small permissions mistakes, minor misconfigurations, overlooked file properties. If you ignore small details, you miss larger attack paths. The chmod case teaches precision matters. The broader lesson is not about chmod, it is about approach. When learning, do not stop at recognition. Ask, what else connects to this? What else could go wrong? How could this be abused? This expansion transforms students into problem solvers. Handling frustration. When encountering subtle issues, frustration is common, but frustration often signals you are close to understanding. Instead of quitting, slow down, re-examine assumptions, reread outputs carefully. Often, the solution is already visible. This case study demonstrates how small technical details matter, why OffSec emphasizes independent thinking, how structured troubleshooting reduces panic, and why expanding beyond examples is critical. The next learning unit will introduce specific learning tactics and study methods that can be applied directly to OSCP preparation.
Up to this point, we have discussed how learning works, why technical learning is difficult, how OffSec's methodology builds independence, and why small details require deep reasoning. Now we move from philosophy to practice. This learning unit introduces specific learning techniques that can dramatically improve OSCP preparation. These are not generic study tips. These are evidence-based learning strategies that align directly with how OSCP is designed. Learning Objective 1. Learn about retrieval practice. Retrieval practice is one of the most powerful learning techniques available. Most students study by rereading. They read notes, rewatch videos, skim documentation. This feels productive, but it is not. Retrieval practice means trying to recall information from memory without looking at the answer. For example, instead of reading how Nmap works again, you close your notes and ask, what are the most important flags? What does SC do? When would I use SV? If you struggle to recall, that struggle strengthens memory. Why retrieval is powerful. When you retrieve information, your brain reinforces neural pathways. Each successful retrieval makes the memory more accessible in the future. This is critical for OSCP. During the exam, you cannot reread documentation constantly. You must recall enumeration strategies, privilege escalation techniques, and common misconfigurations. Retrieval practice prepares you for that. Applying retrieval to OSCP. You can apply retrieval by writing commands from memory, explaining concepts without notes, solving lab challenges without walkthroughs. If you always keep notes open, you weaken retrieval strength. Learning objective. 2. Understand spaced practice. Spaced practice combats the forgetting curve. Instead of studying a topic intensely once, you revisit it over increasing intervals. For example, study privilege escalation today. Review it in 2 days. Review again in a week. Review again in 2 weeks. Each spaced review strengthens retention. Why cramming fails. Cramming increases short-term familiarity, but OSCP preparation often lasts months. Cramming leads to rapid forgetting, false confidence, and frustration later. Spaced repetition builds durable memory. Practical spacing strategy. You can create weekly review blocks, flashcard systems, and rotating lab revisits. Spaced practice ensures that earlier modules remain accessible when you reach advanced topics. Learning objective. 3. Explore SQ3R and PQ4R methods. These are structured reading techniques. They prevent passive consumption. SQ3R method. SQ3R stands for survey, question, read, recite, review. When reading OSCP material, first survey the section, then ask questions about it, then read carefully, then recite key points from memory. Finally, review later. This structure increases active engagement. PQ4R method. PQ4R stands for preview, question, read, reflect, recite, review. The key difference is reflection. Reflection means thinking about how this connects to what you already know. Connection strengthens encoding. Why structured reading matters. Technical documentation is dense. If you skim, you miss details. If you read passively, you forget quickly. Structured reading reduces extraneous cognitive load. Learning objective 4. Examine the Feynman technique. The Feynman technique is simple. If you cannot explain something simply, you do not understand it. To apply this, choose a concept like buffer overflow, privilege escalation, or file permissions, then explain it as if teaching a beginner. If you get stuck, you've found a knowledge gap. This technique reveals weak areas quickly. Why this works for OSCP. OSCP requires clear reasoning. If you cannot articulate why a vulnerability exists, how exploitation works, then your understanding is shallow. Teaching reinforces understanding, even if you teach an imaginary audience. Learning objective 5. Understand the Leitner system. The Leitner system is a flashcard strategy based on spaced repetition. Cards are divided into boxes. Box 1, reviewed daily. Box 2, reviewed every few days. Box 3, reviewed weekly. When you answer correctly, the card moves forward. When you answer incorrectly, it moves backward. This system ensures that weak areas receive more attention, strong areas are reviewed less frequently. Applying Leitner to OSCP. You can create flashcards for common ports and services, privilege escalation vectors, enumeration techniques, and Linux permission structures. Flashcards should test retrieval, not recognition. Instead of, what does -SV mean? Ask, when would I use -SV and why? Integrating these methods together. These methods are not separate. They reinforce each other. Retrieval practice plus spaced repetition creates strong memory retention. Structured reading reduces wasted effort. The Feynman technique reveals misunderstanding. Together, they create efficient, durable learning. Avoiding over-optimization. Be careful not to over-engineer your study process. Learning tools are helpful, but they must not replace practice. The most important OSCP preparation still involves hands-on labs, troubleshooting, and independent reasoning. Learning methods support practice, they do not replace it. This learning unit provides concrete learning tactics, memory reinforcement strategies, and structured study approaches. The next learning unit will focus on advice and suggestions on exams, including stress management and readiness evaluation. So far, we've covered how learning works, why technical learning is difficult, how OffSec's methodology builds independence, how small details require structured thinking, and practical learning methods to strengthen retention. Now, we move into something more personal. The OSCP exam is not just technical, it is psychological. This learning unit focuses on managing exam stress, recognizing readiness, and developing a practical approach to the 24-hour challenge. Learning Objective 1. Develop strategies for exam-related stress. The OSCP exam is long, 24 hours. That alone changes the experience. Even confident candidates experience anxiety, fatigue, and self-doubt. Stress is normal. The goal is not to eliminate stress. The goal is to manage it. Understanding stress response. When you encounter difficulty during the exam, your brain may trigger a stress response. This can cause racing thoughts, tunnel vision, and impulsive decisions. Tunnel vision is especially dangerous. You focus on one path even when it clearly isn't working. Managing stress means recognizing when you are stuck, stepping back intentionally, and reevaluating calmly. Controlled pauses. During a 24-hour exam, pauses are strategic, not weak. If you feel overwhelmed, stand up, stretch, breathe deeply, and reset your perspective. Short breaks improve cognitive performance. Continuous frustration decreases it. Reframing difficulty. When something does not work, avoid interpreting it as failure. Instead, interpret it as information. Every failed attempt teaches what is not vulnerable, what assumptions were incorrect. This reframing reduces emotional pressure. Learning Objective 2. Recognize when you are ready for the exam. Many candidates ask, how do I know when I'm ready? Readiness is not about feeling perfectly confident, mastering every tool, or knowing every exploit. Readiness is about consistency. Signs of readiness. You are likely ready when you can enumerate methodically without guidance. You troubleshoot calmly. You document clearly and efficiently. You recognize common misconfigurations quickly. You do not need perfection. You need structured thinking. The danger of endless preparation. Some candidates delay the exam repeatedly. They believe, I need one more month. I need to master everything first. But OSCP is not about total mastery. It is about applied reasoning. At some point, real testing accelerates learning. Avoid perfection paralysis. Practicing under constraints. To evaluate readiness, simulate constraints. Set time limits. Work without notes. Practice structured reporting. Constraints reveal weaknesses. It is better to discover weaknesses before exam day. Learning Objective 3. Understand a practical approach to exams. A practical approach reduces chaos. The OSCP exam rewards structure, prioritization, and documentation discipline. Initial enumeration phase. When starting a machine, do not rush to exploit. First, gather information, map services, identify attack surfaces. Structured enumeration prevents wasted time. Prioritization. Not all vulnerabilities are equal. Evaluate likelihood of success, potential access gained, complexity. Avoid spending hours on low probability paths. Documentation during the exam. Documentation is not secondary, it is part of the exam. Poor documentation increases stress later. Document as you go. Include commands used, outputs, and reasoning. Clear notes reduce cognitive load. Managing energy. The exam is long. Energy management matters more than intensity. Strategies include scheduling short breaks, eating properly, staying hydrated, and avoiding excessive caffeine spikes. Fatigue increases mistakes. Handling stuck situations. If stuck, pause, re-enumerate, recheck assumptions, and switch targets if necessary. Returning later with fresh perspective often reveals missed details. Avoiding panic during privilege escalation. Privilege escalation often feels chaotic. Many possible vectors exist. Instead of guessing randomly, systematically check known categories, eliminate options, and document findings. Structure defeats panic. Psychological resilience.
The OSCP exam is partly a resilience test. You will encounter unexpected behavior, partial failures, and confusing outputs. Your advantage is not speed, it is composure. Calm thinking preserves working memory. This learning unit focused on managing stress, evaluating readiness, and practical exam execution strategy. The final learning unit will bring everything together by converting learning theory and exam advice into a concrete, long-term strategy.
Up to this point, we have covered how learning works at a cognitive level, why technical skills are uniquely challenging, how OffSec's methodology builds independence, a case study showing structured reasoning, learning tactics backed by research, practical advice for the OSCP exam. Now we bring everything together. Theory is useful, strategies are helpful, but execution is what determines results. This final unit focuses on turning everything we discussed into practical action. Learning objective 1. Create a long-term strategy. OSCP preparation is not a short sprint, it is a structured process. Without a long-term strategy, effort becomes scattered. Define phases of preparation. Instead of studying randomly, define phases. Phase 1, Foundation. Linux basics, networking fundamentals, enumeration mindset. Phase 2, Guided practice. Lab walkthroughs, structured exercises, note building. Phase 3, Independent practice. Solving machines without hints, time-limited attempts, reporting practice. Breaking preparation into phases reduces overwhelm. Avoid random tool chasing. Many learners jump between tools, exploit scripts, and trending vulnerabilities, but OSCP rewards methodology, not tool memorization. Build a consistent workflow. Enumerate, identify, exploit, escalate, document. Consistency builds speed naturally. Learning objective 2. Use time allotment strategies. Time management determines exam performance. During preparation, avoid marathon study sessions without structure. Instead, use focused study blocks, take scheduled breaks, review daily. During the exam, allocate time per machine. Do not let one target consume the entire attempt. Time awareness prevents panic later. Weekly structure example. A structured week might include 3 days focused labs, 1 day review, 1 day privilege escalation deep dive, 1 day documentation practice, 1 day rest. Consistency beats intensity. Learning objective 3. Learn when to narrow focus. Early preparation is broad. You explore many topics. Later preparation must narrow. As the exam approaches, identify weak areas. Examples: Windows privilege escalation, Active Directory concepts, Linux misconfigurations. Target weaknesses deliberately. Avoid continuing only what feels comfortable. Growth happens at the edge of competence. Learning objective 4. Understand the importance of community. OSCP preparation can feel isolating, but community provides perspective, encouragement, and shared strategies. However, community must be used correctly. Use it to clarify concepts, confirm understanding, discuss methodology, not to shortcut reasoning or request direct solutions prematurely. Community should support thinking, not replace it. Learning objective 5. Improve attention and learning optimization. Attention is your most valuable resource. Distraction reduces encoding strength. During study sessions, remove notifications, close unrelated tabs, and focus on one task at a time. Deep focus accelerates learning. Optimize environment. Your study environment influences cognitive load. Improve your lighting, your posture, your screen organization, and your note structure. Small improvements reduce mental fatigue. Reflection after sessions. After each session, ask, what did I learn? What confused me? What should I review? Reflection consolidates memory. Without reflection, progress feels invisible. Let's step back and see the full picture. Module 3 was not about hacking tools. It was about how learning works, why OSCP feels difficult, why OffSec teaches the way it does, how to structure preparation, how to manage stress, and how to think independently. If Module 2 built your understanding of cybersecurity, Module 3 builds your ability to survive OSCP. OSCP is not just technical, it is cognitive, psychological, and strategic. You are not competing against the exam, you are competing against disorganization, distraction,
panic and inefficient learning. If you master your learning process, technical skills follow. Before moving forward into more technical modules, remember this: tools change, exploits evolve, but structured thinking, deliberate practice, and disciplined learning remain constant. That is what Module 3 was designed to teach. If you are serious about passing OSCP, do not rush past this module. Revisit it, apply it, structure your preparation intentionally. In the next module, we begin transitioning back into deeper technical territory. And now you are prepared to approach it correctly.